As followers of Jesus, in order to grow and thrive, we know we should draw upon the fresh waters of God's wisdom found in His Word. But we may not know how to start, or think it's very confusing, or what to do when something is difficult to understand. The Thematic Bible Conference aims to provide practical guidance so that you too can discover the meaning of what God has revealed in His Word. Come and join us for today's lesson.
I will say a few words about what is inductive Bible study. Inductive Bible study is actually very simple. It means using the specific examples in the Bible to arrive at the general principles about what God has revealed about Himself, about what God expects of people, and how do people respond to God. For example, if we pick up the Bible and study a person called Abraham, we are not just interested in the historical facts about Abraham, how tall he is, whether he has a long beard, and all that stuff that nobody really wants to know and not recorded in the Bible anyway. We want to know how God revealed Himself to Abraham and how Abraham, this person, would respond to God, and how other people will respond to him when he said, well, God told him certain things. Now, to be accurate, you not only study the general principles of how God do these things and how people will respond to God using just the example of Abraham. You would study Isaac, Jacob, and all the other major characters in the Bible to arrive from specific examples of the Bible to arrive at the general principles about how God do these things, and therefore arrive at the proper understanding how we should respond to God ourselves today. So that part, the last part, how we get involved, is called application. Now, to do inductive Bible study, most people would say, gee, doesn't everybody does it that way? No, it's not true. There are several methods that people approach the Bible. It may not be obvious to them right away, but we would like the inductive Bible method because we want to build the general principles based on the valid specific examples from the Bible. I'll pick an example from Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. Now, it's not always a good idea to pick just one verse to illustrate general principle, but this will do. We know that the Magi, this is about after Jesus was born, certain wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, and they brought 3 gifts. Now, the statement is that we can make, the general principle we can say is that these people came prepared. Usually people, if they bring gifts, that means they have a clear idea what they want to do and whom they want to present the gifts to. So it's okay to draw the general statement that these people came prepared. And the second one, if you really want to talk about it too, these are foreigners. These are not Jewish people. And so sometimes God would even use foreigners to reveal His plan. So those are acceptable statements. Now, whether you want to use it on your group on that day is a different story, but that's at least inductive in terms of understanding what the Bible has said and the proper interpretation. However, there are other people who would use a deductive method. They already have prepared an idea, and then they go to the Bible to find a passage to support their idea. The listener who is not trained, who is not careful, will sometimes be confused. They will think it's in the Bible because, of course, the idea has been picked and then they find the evidence from the Bible. Well, they say, for example, we need to worship in peace and unity. Now, I'm the last one to say that we should not worship in peace and unity. So it's not a bad idea itself. However, is that in the Bible? Well, the person using the Bible will say, well, you see, the Magi brought 3 gifts and gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and all that. Oh, obviously, they never fought with each other. Not everybody bring gold. Not everybody borrow myrrh. So they coordinated gifts perfectly. See, so we should do the same thing if we were to lead a Christian life. Well, you can use the Bible that way, but then you're stretching a little bit. Why are you stretching a little bit? Because the person reading the Bible say, is that really in the Bible? Yeah, maybe. So it's really deductive. Now, there are others who are even worse. They are the speculative group. They based on the fact the Bible said there are 3 kinds of gifts to mean that there are 3 magi, there are 3 wise men, okay? And they say, well, 3 wise men, there's actually a 4th one. Well, the 4th one was distracted by this homeless guy. He intended to go and worship Jesus, but he never get to see Jesus because he spent his whole life taking care of the homeless. And he only saw Christ when Christ was crucified on the cross and everybody was touched. Well, this is really speculation. But it will make a wonderful story. I mean, Hollywood would love that kind of story. So the Christian must be very careful what exactly did the Bible say, what did the Bible not say, to make a distinction so that people would base their faith on what the Bible has said and not base their faith on what Hollywood wants us to believe. There are certain foundations, there are certain principle steps necessary for the proper study of the Word of God. First of all, it's called observation. Observation is as simple as saying, what exactly did the author say? Now, for the English-speaking person, he has a variety of Bible versions, King James, New American Standard, and International, and so on and so forth. So there is a variety of shades of differences in terms of how they bring the language to the English-speaking person. But still, when you read the Bible has recorded for us what it said. Now, if there's an interpretation, if there's an argument as to whether a certain word is actually there in the original, you can use an interlinear Bible. These are techniques that we can talk about some other time. But there are ways to show that, yes, that word is in the original Greek, or it's not in the original Greek. And so it may be added in certain versions to help certain people to understand it, but it's not in the original. So we can go into that. The second step, after we observe what's in there, and the English Bible has the wonderful thing that it has plural and singular, which the Chinese versions don't. Chinese-speaking person will have a little problem sometimes because it's not clear. He or she and past tense or present tense is not that easy. So for us who are bilingual and bicultural or more than one culture, we do have that advantage. Make use of that. The reason why we observe carefully is because all interpretations are based on observations. And interpretation is not, it depends how you interpret the Bible. No, it does not depend on the reader. It depends on what the author intends to say. Now, this is very simple. Sometimes the mother wants the child to clean the room. The child ignores the mother. The mother will say, well, I want you to clean the room. Well, what does it mean now or tomorrow or next year? If you're not clear, the mother will say again, I want you to clean up the room now. So it is not how the son will interpret the mother to say. It is what the mother intends to say. So in this case, interpretation, again, let me repeat, is not depending on the student in the group. It depends how you interpret this word. No, it depends what the author intends to say. And there are definite rules of interpretation to guide us through that. So the first step would be application. Only when you make it clear that the author is trying to say this or that, then you draw the application. What does that message mean to us or me today? It's like a wedding cake. The lowest layer must be the strongest and firmest foundation, otherwise the whole thing collapses. So if there's an argument about interpretation, you go back to observation. The person who has made better observation, more accurate observation is the one who has the better interpretation. It does not mean that it's correct. Everybody can be wrong. But at least when two people are arguing, the person who has the better observation will have a better chance of getting the intention of the author. Not everything has to be applied. Not every statement in the Bible has to be applied. But if you were saying, this is what we need to do today, it better be based on the proper interpretation, which is based on the proper observation. So these are the three fundamental steps. Now, given the fact that we all have biases, even the Bible study leader, even a preacher, even a seminarian would have cultural backgrounds that would tend to lead him to look at the Bible in certain ways. The major question is, how can we be sure that we get the correct message? Here, inductive Bible study is very important. Inductive Bible study is more than just a private study, but we start with the private study, and then we will have a group study. I will talk about the group study in a few minutes. In a private study, first you choose a passage to read and study yourself. A passage is starting with a particular verse in the Bible, ending with another verse in the Bible that has a central theme. Now you can study, it does not necessarily follow the chapters. And sometimes you can start with the last verse of the previous chapter, and sometimes we start with verse 5 in a chapter. But wherever you begin or end, it better have a centralized, outstanding theme. Study the passage yourself carefully. At the end, close the Bible and say to yourself, the theme is XYZ. Otherwise, you haven't done that study. The second point I would strongly urge you is to write a set of questions for your group. The reason that you need to have the Bible study with a group is very simple. We tend to comfort ourselves with the things that we like. We tend to ignore things that we do not like. And so there are a lot of times that we do this to ourselves without knowing it. This can go on for years. So if you have a group, the group will correct you if you have these fancy ideas that's not in the Bible. So gather a group. A group can be just one person. I mean, you can talk to your spouse, your wife, your husband, and say, honey, I just studied this passage. I want you to make sure that, to help me make sure that I understand this passage correctly. Can we spend 45 minutes tonight, sit down, go over the passage just between the two of us? Or you can lead your child to a Bible study, or your coworker, anybody who's willing to sit down with you. You will be amazed the number of people who are willing to study the Bible, because very often when they show up in a Christian group, they get lectured to. Everybody wants them to raise their hand, believe in Jesus Christ, without explaining what it means. They are really tired of those things. I'm sorry, I'm Christian for a long time. I know how those things go. Yes, we should still persuade people to receive Jesus Christ, but the opportunity is wide open for people to study the Bible. In fact, I can tell you the personal story. My own brother, elder brother, I haven't seen him for many, many years because I left for college education way ahead of the time. And he came to see me in America, and the first thing before he arrived, I say, Walter, you know I'm a good Christian. I've been a Christian for a long time. Would it be all right if we spend an hour studying John chapter 3 when you come and visit me from Hong Kong? We spend an hour studying John chapter 3, which is what I'm going to study with you today. And years later, he remembered that. Anyway, he said, nobody ever shared the Bible like that with me. There's one person, my own brother, that we never have a chance to talk about religion, but he opened the Bible, we studied the Bible. That really spare all that preaching that you need to do. Just study the Bible. Okay. So prepare a set of questions ahead of time. Don't just shoot out the breeze. Use the question to lead the group, your other person there, to discover what the Bible has said. It's not to preach to that person. It's to lead the person to know what the Bible has said. If you made a mistake, the other person say, no, I don't think that's what the Bible said, then fine, you are wrong, the other person is right. So what? You learn something from your student. That's perfectly okay. Use the group dynamics to enhance objectivity. All these things we will talk more in the subsequent group. Group dynamics is how you ask questions, how you entertain, ideas, and when you have two or three or more people. The idea of group dynamics is not just to get people excited, what do you think, and get everybody interested. The idea is to enhance objectivity. Objectivity means when different people looking at the same data, even though they're different people, they will come to the same conclusion. So if you have a non-Christian sitting in that group, if you have a non-Chinese sitting in that group, you have a person from a completely different culture, they all look at the Bible, they all agree that's what the Bible is saying. Voila, you got it. This is objectivity. So the group dynamic is not just to get people to talk, and definitely not to share the ignorance, but to arrive objectively at the teaching of the Bible. And you know what? The funny part is this. The group will not agree with the leader if the idea from the leader is not in the passage. So you have a chance to grow yourself, you have a chance to learn something. So I find this fascinating. I've been doing this for several decades, 4 decades, and I still enjoy doing that. So what do you observe? Fundamental. You observe a few number of things which is very simple. My PowerPoint is not moving. Oh, okay, who? In the past, we all know that who, what, when, whom, where, why, how. You say, oh, all these are very simple. Sure. But to avoid repeating your own biases, I would share with you a way called textual grammatical analysis. You will find that it's very simple. You basically copy the Bible one more time. You can download a certain passage from the Bible, copy and paste it. Remove all the verses because the chapter and verses, all the commentary is not in the original Bible. So just copy the text itself and indent the passage when you find a new idea. The textual grammatical idea, the purpose is to find out what the author is trying to say. Every author has ideas in him, and he will organize the ideas in a way that would make sense to the reader. In this particular case, I have chosen Matthew chapter 2. You will find right away there are two major points, 1 and 2. You can see that. What are two major points? Well, the first one, now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. Well, the first point was Jesus was born, and this is what happened. The second one, when Herod the king heard these things. Oh, how did Herod respond to what happened? So what happened was that there came wise men from the east, and these people came saying, where is he born, the King of the Jews? For we have seen the star in the east and have come. Well, that tells you one thing. These are people who come prepared. These are people who are not tourists. They did not just happen to drop by Jerusalem trying to do some shopping. They came prepared. How do we know that they came? They did not sit there when they see the star. They came. When they came, they expressed the reason. They say they actually came to, they may be wrong, coming to the wrong place, but they said, we have seen and we have come. So these people have taken action. And so to that kind of a initiative, how did Herod respond? Well, Herod was not happy at all, and he commanded them, he demanded from them certain things, he said to them, and they said to him. So these are the progression of a very simple passage, and we want to see what it's all about. Now, as I say, some people would tend to say, well, Matthew chapter 2 is about worship. Really, it's not really about worship, because if you look at it carefully, it's about the three different kinds of responses to the arrival of Jesus. Herod was not even interested in worshiping, and certainly the third group, the children, did not even get a chance to worship. It's not about worship, if you expand the study to the entire chapter 2. So how do I come to this correct interpretation? Again, because you need to look at what the Bible is trying to say. The correct interpretation is getting, let me repeat this, is getting at what the speaker intends to say to his immediate audience. It's not for you today, the 21st century. You are the secondary audience. The primary audience is the people living around Matthew's time. Is not what we think of it means today. Let us not just be so self-centered. Everything has to be about me, me, me today. First, Matthew was writing to the people of his time for them to understand things. Of course, those same things have the same principle involved that is important for us today, and so to that extent we want to learn it also. But first, it's about his people. So proper interpretation is based on proper observation. Now, after that, we move into the application. Application is basically, in a simple word, equal sign. Put in the equal sign. What do you mean by equal sign? In what way is a situation in the Bible equal to our situation today? If it's not equal, then don't talk about it because it's not relevant. Okay, so the student leader, the group leader needs to have some understanding of the student. The leader needs to have understanding of the present situation to find out what is the situation today to match the situation in the Bible. Not every statement in the Bible needs to be applied, but the good application definitely is finding a good fit between the biblical teaching and our needs. For example, let me say this. The Bible said the Magi went to the wrong place, but God still guided them. So if you finish the chapter 2, you'll find out that God had a wonderful way of doing things. Well, isn't it true that today we have the same thing? Sometimes we intend to worship God. We actually prepare well to worship, but we go to the wrong place, meaning that the way we worship God is not exactly right. So sometimes our ideas need to be adjusted. So the principle would be God will protect his plan and his worshipers, even evil in this case Herod would not be able to stop God from carrying out his plan. And this is how God saved Jesus Christ when he was about 2 years old. So overall purpose is to get the big picture. We're not just interested in the Magi. We're not just interested in the Herod's response. We're not just interested in how some people would suffer when Christ came. We are interested in what would chapter 2 fit into, why do we need to read this after chapter 1, and how does this prepare for chapter 3? The author has a reason for the way he organized his book, and so he put chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, and chapter 4, and the rest. We need to get the bigger picture. I know there's not enough time in the Bible study in a Friday night to do all of the above, but it is important that when we teach people that we do organize it that way. I know sometimes people take the topical way. Well, it's more important that if the students want to learn how to date, then we have a topic about dating. Well, good luck. Of course, then they go to Rebecca, and so somebody has to sit by the well, and Rebecca will show up. Well, thank you. So sometimes we tend to get a shortcut and organize it from a topical. That's really taking a big risk. I rather look at the Bible as it is presented, and you will be fascinated how Matthew organized the book. So it's very helpful, much easier for everybody if we do it, study the book, one book at a time. Sure, chapter by chapter, but definitely theme by theme, small theme by small theme. But look at the way he organized it, and you will learn a lot. Now, as I said, chapter 2 is not even about worship, because if you expand chapter 2 more than chapter 2 verse 1, you will find out that, as I said, Herod was not interested, and there was a third group, the innocent children were slaughtered. So what is the take-home lesson? We should not conclude that, every time somebody wants to worship God, some other people will have to die. No, that's not true. It's just that be realistic. Just because you want to worship God, just because you take all the trouble to prepare to come and worship God, it does not mean everybody will rejoice. There will be innocent people who may be harmed by the evil. It's not because you did not cause it, but evil will have casualties. We'll have what they call bilateral casualties. So we have to be very careful and understand that, hey, we still need to proclaim the truth, even though some other people may not like what we are doing. So that is the whole chapter 2. Chapter 2 is basically, if you want to study the whole chapter, about the response of several groups of people to Christ's arrival. What is the big picture? The big picture is that Jesus is the Messiah. You get that from chapter 1, verse 1. Now, I don't know how many people actually spend time studying chapter 1 of Matthew. I know my response. For a long time when I grew up in the Christian community, every day, chapter 1 is so boring, let's start with chapter 2. And I keep asking, but why is that chapter 1? Well, chapter 1 is a whole list of things. But if you look at what is the whole list of things, you will find out that it is a list of the kings who were before Jesus. Now, people say, well, how do I know they're kings? Please, you have Google today. Check out those names in Google. You have no excuse. Well, of course, you have the Bible. Wow, it's too hard to find those names. Well, check it out. You will find out it's a list of kings. These are the ancestors to Jesus. Now, I know when I check my own, recently my brother gave me a list of my ancestors, 3 generations above, which is amazing to me that I got to know the name of my grandfather. I have nobody in my ancestry to boast about. So sometimes people say, oh, Dr. Yan, what's your last name? Your last name is Yan, Yan 是的 Yan, color. Oh, strange. I don't remember anybody with the last name. I say, oh, wow, you're an educated guy. Don't you know Confucius, the top student, Yan Yuan, he's the same last name. See, I can claim that as my ancestor. Ha, ha, ha. Everybody wants to claim as some brilliant guy as the part of his ancestral tree. And certainly if I have one emperor that was my ancestor, you will not stop hearing from me every day that I came from a descendant of the kings, okay? So why did Matthew include this long list in chapter 1? Jesus, this person called Jesus, he has 14 generations, more than 14 kings if you look at it carefully, okay? At least if you include David. at least 14 generations. This guy came from a genealogy of kings. If we start with that, I'm sure you'll ask that, really? How come I did not know that? Well, that's your problem. You ought to know that. So people would right away say, what? If we have a new king, what does he expect of me? Well, then you read chapter 2 and 3 and 4. Chapter 2 tells you not everybody welcomes this king. Chapter 3 would go on to tell you what are some of the preaching of the king and what he did to recruit other people. So you ought to follow him too. So when you look at the bigger picture, it's actually very, very exciting. It's not about worship. It's about the arrival of the king. The Messiah, actually, I misspoken, okay? The Messiah is the prophet, priest, and king. Is more than just the king, but king being the predominant theme over here. Chapter 3 and the rest is about what the Messiah has come to do. So if Christians start to teach other people using the Bible with the open Bible, I emphasize. A lot of times people close the Bible and start telling people about the Bible. Do you believe this? Do you believe it? Why would they believe you? Because they don't know what you're talking about. If you open the Bible, even non-Christian will say, I never knew this. They may not believe right away, but they already have the data implanted in their mind. One day they will believe. So this is an introduction about thematic Bible study. We're using inductive Bible study method because we want to find out what the Bible has said, and then we draw conclusions from there. If you have a group with you, you tend not to make big mistakes. The group will correct you. If the person doesn't know it, the answer, you point out the Bible. Don't give them the answer. Point out the verse. If you look at this verse, isn't that the answer? Can you find out the answer from that verse? I mean, if you have go to that level, yes. The purpose is to have the person understand the message from the Bible. Yes, Matthew is a big book. You may not have time to cover all the chapters, but do what you can. Even little bits of it will help the person on the way to search for the truth. And may the Lord bless you. Use this method. You will find a blessing yourself and all those around you.